Hello again. In my hand today I have a Motorola V70. Its finish is in aluminium and it's very light. It weighs around 80 grams. I'll just show you the swivel action. Now the swivel itself goes all the way around and goes basically 360 degrees. So what we see here is a display inside, and you would have thought that this display would have been a snazzy round one. Well, I think they tried to do that in the development phase and decided to go with a standard rectangular display, and this was because of the poor software available at the time. So the display here that was used is only 96 by 64 pixels, and it has a reverse LCD. So instead of being sort of black LCD on white, it's the reverse. So I'll show you that if I turn that into position. In the startup screen is quite similar to other screens that you would have seen on other Motorola's around the same time. The actual back sort of lit part of the LCD, it looks a little bit like the watches as well at the time, so like the Timex, Casio and Loris watches. Personally, I think that this phone is sort of let down by the aerial, so the appearance, you know, it's quite nice to look at, and then you've got this stubby aerial here, and I know that the phones a little bit later on, or possibly around the same time, there were some Siemens phones around the same kind of size as this, and they had built-in aerials, so that was just a bit smarter, and then you could keep your kind of rounded edge without having the aerial there. So phone calls could be answered by swiveling this, so when the phone rang you could swivel it into position and then start talking. So just to explain, here we have a earpiece, and on this part here we have some push through buttons. So these aren't buttons in their own sense, so they actually push through when it's closed onto these buttons here, and these are navigation buttons. There's some fixed buttons here, so we have a left and a right selector and the menu button there, and you've got the power on the phone, end the call, and you've got the start the call here. So so they're kind of your main buttons. On the side there was a volume button which you could use, and I'll swivel that back around again. There was a earphone socket here, so you could use this phone sort of hands-free, and there was also a Motorola FM radio headset that you could plug into there and listen to the radio with. And then looking at the bottom there, you could see a standard kind of charging port area, and then a accessory port which I believe would support USB, so and possibly maybe the data side of the phone. So I'm just going to turn that off a minute, and I'll show you this starting up, I think, with the main lights off. So you can see it's nicely lit, a blue background sort of keyboard, and the backlight for the LCD. Hopefully you can make out it says insert SIM. Now looking at the phone in a little bit more detail, it's got a back cover there, and it's sort of held together with Torx screws, so they look quite smart actually, and you've got to push in the button to pull the cover off. And once you've got the cover off, there's like a graphic telling you how to take the cover off or put the cover back on. I'm not too sure, but I think if you've got that far, then that graphic's probably not that useful anymore. So there's the battery. Now the batteries are a little bit expensive to get hold of these days, and this one's only just got a little bit of charge. It sort of fits into the phone like that. So you can see inside there's a regular sort of SIM card size that would have been standard at the time. It's bigger than we have for sort of smartphones now, and it says it's made in China. So if I just push that back in, you can see how the battery goes in. So there's no extra memory sort of slots or anything like that. As you can see, when I showed the video with the light switched off, it's got a back light that is blue. So that's quite impressive. And the battery itself on new, like when the phone was new, you would have had 120 hours standby, and that's pretty good actually. The network that this phone would have used is 2G, and it was a GPRS network, dual band GSM 900 and 1800. Quite interestingly, the later 3G network, at least in the UK, is being switched off soon by the end of 2024, and the 2G network, looks like it's going to outlive the 3G a little bit longer, and is anticipated to be in use right up until 2033. So we're looking at about 10 more years to use these phones. So that's where we are there. So the standard sort of items in the phone, the predictive text for messaging, it can receive data and fax calls, and has some games built into it as well. These games are Blackjack, Mind Blaster and Paddleball. The browser for browsing the internet was WAP enabled, which was the feature at the time. So WAP pages served very kind of low memory pages, but I mean, trying to use this with such a small screen, maybe it was useful for a little while, but you couldn't go back to this now, I don't think. We're buying a phone like this now, you're looking at about 35 or 40 pounds sort of spares or repair, and they tend to go for quite a bit more money, certainly on eBay, which seems to whack the prices up for everything, anything vaguely kind of interesting. Now the battery is getting quite hard to source now, so if you were to look for a V70 and it didn't have a battery, then you really have to take it into account that it might just be an item that you want to look at rather than ever switched on, because it is quite hard to get those batteries. Now this phone that I'm holding has suffered from a bit of scratching and wear, so there's a general wear and tear here, so you can see a little bit of wear on this part, and the screen is definitely kind of sort of scratched, and the chrome surround. The rest of it isn't too bad, but you can see with the key pad there's some scratching on the keys here, and we're quite lucky, I suppose, in that most of the well, all of the actual text above the keys looks to be present, but even the navigation buttons there are sort of scratched, and what I believe has caused it is aging. So this phone has got this kind of tacky sort of plastic, and again, it was quite common to see this in lots of sort of phones and kind of devices going back to that sort of age or before, is that the plastic can go off and get tacky, and this, I believe, is contributing to the scratching of the buttons, unfortunately. So that's a little shame. So it's not a perfect example by any stretch, but it just kind of shows you what you might get if you're if you're looking for one of these phones, or what to kind of avoid. What might clean this up actually is some 90% alcohol, and have a go at cleaning that. I think that would actually solve that issue, and it might actually feel a bit freer as it sort of spins around, because I think it's kind of catching a little bit there. So parts for these phones are quite readily available on eBay, so people do go as far as breaking down these phones, so you might find some kind of PCB parts, at least perhaps for this bit here, that are still available. And that would be it. I think that's about all I can say about it, without obviously going into the menu, which I can't do at the moment because I don't have a SIM card that works, but the menu will be quite similar to other phones of that time, and there's plenty of videos and manuals out there for you to read up about the menu system. We'll just power that off there. Now, an alternative to a phone like that may be interested in looking at if you're in the market for collecting some old phones. So this is a Motorola V50, and it's a similar size actually to this one, but very much more kind of robust, and this was a phone that I had for quite a few years actually, and brilliant phone. I had an original stack, but this phone was great once I got hold of this phone in the early sort of 2000s, and you can see it's quite warm because this button here is sort of cracking, so they're quite easy to find, the V50s, and probably batteries aren't too bad. Going on from there, and this was my phone, which I think I bought second hand, and after this one, but I just like the design of it, and I kind of got on better with it because of the size of it. So that's the V60. And then moving on, we have a Nokia 8850. So just a nice looking phone there. This one's a little bit kind of beaten up, but again, they're all fairly similar sort of sizes, and they all kind of cover the keyboard area, so they're not like the sort of bar phones, the candy bar phones, which prevailed for quite a long time. And then finally, quite a cheap option, and one that seems to be quite plentiful to get hold of, is a Samsung, and this is a SGH E300, and this had a similar colour to to the Motorola. So when you opened it up, it was blue, but it was a lot brighter blue. And again, the keyboard lit up. So this phone is quite interesting to look at. A little bit square for my liking. Not enough kind of rounded edges. So yeah, that one's probably my preference out of these phones. If I was to use one now, it would be this one. But thanks for watching the video, and I shall do some more videos in the future. Bye for now.